In the 90s, a craze hit the United States that was unlike anything anyone had ever seen: Pokémon. Pokémon, which included an animated TV show, a trading card game, video games, and several movies, was based on a fictitious version of Earth where creatures called Pokémon existed alongside humans. These creatures were essentially animals, with some being domesticated and others being wild. Additionally, there were people known as Pokémon trainers, who went out into the wild and caught Pokémon to add to their collection. Something about this phenomenon hit home with children, and even adults across the globe, with many kids playing the games and watching the shows, dreaming of getting as close as they could to being a real-life Pokémon trainer. But unfortunately, there's nothing in the real world that even resembles Pokémon. Or is there? Enter the pastime known as birding. Birding, which was once stereotyped as a hobby reserved for the elderly and retired, has started to catch on with younger people, and the fact that it's surprisingly close to playing Pokémon in real life might be a reason why. Here are 5 reasons birding is extremely close to Pokémon in real life. You can capture them. One of the most interesting things about Pokémon is the collecting aspect. In the TV show, the main character named Ash had a goal to catch every Pokémon, spawning one of the primary slogans of the intellectual property, "Gotta catch 'em all." In the show and game, Pokémon are captured by way of a Pokéball and registered to something called a Pokédex, which is pretty much an electronic field guide. In birding, the concept of catching something is still there, but instead of physically obtaining the bird, it's gathering photos, check marks on lists, and experiences. The goal for many birders is to see as many species as possible, or to photograph as many species as possible. The idea of a Pokédex even lines up well too, especially considering the way birders can keep track of so many stats and sightings through websites like eBird. It's driven by rarity. In Pokémon, there are many different common types of creatures, but the ones that people are really interested in finding most are the ones that are low in numbers, the rare ones. Some of these Pokémon are simply few and far between, but others that are known as legendaries only have one in existence. This idea of rarity is mirrored in the world of birding. The birds that people want to see most are the ones that either don't frequently make it to their area, or those that are even low in numbers globally. There are even some birds that actually are so endangered that there may only be one left in existence, causing avid birders to make long trips to try and see them. While rarity is an important aspect of many collection-based hobbies, in both Pokémon and birding, the way in which rare creatures are coveted seems too similar to ignore. The species vary based on region and habitat. In the animated TV series and various Pokémon games, different types of Pokémon are found in different regions and habitats. For example, electric types of Pokémon are found near power plants, and grass and bug types are found in forests. Each one of these Pokémon can be found in other locations, but has a general place they are more often located in. This is the same with bird species. Some birds are extremely habitat specific, and can only be found in particular places with specific conditions or vegetation. Going to different habitats will yield completely different sets of species than others. This is so much the case that experienced birders can fairly reliably predict what species they will come across in a new place, just by paying attention to the habitat. In addition to habitat, however, both birds and Pokémon vary based on region, with completely different species living in the different continents of the world. This was a major point in Pokémon, with the original region being called Kanto, and having certain Pokémon that lived there. As the franchise evolved, more regions were explored that unlocked even more never-before-seen Pokémon. In birding, as one explores more parts of the world, the more birds they see, and the more species they add to their list that they wouldn't have gotten had they not explored. Shinies exist. In Pokémon, there are plenty of creatures to find, but sometimes the rarest ones don't necessarily depend on the species. Something called a shiny exists in the Pokémon world. Shiny Pokémon are essentially a different color variation of the normal Pokémon, and are coveted because of their rarity and uniqueness. In the bird world, something similar exists. While there are color morphs to some species such as eastern screech owls that come in gray and red, there are also some especially interesting pigment mutations too. The most common of them is leucism. Leucism can be caused by a variety of different things, but what it boils down to is a partial or complete loss of pigmentation, usually creating white patches of skin, fur, or feathers. This leads to a one-of-a-kind look, different than any other individual of the species, a real-life shiny. Some Pokémon are actually birds. Funny enough, most Pokémon are based off of real-life plants and animals. Certainly birds were a major source of inspiration for the creators of Pokémon. It's safe to say that you could easily see something that looks precariously identical to Tailo in real life, or Wingull, or Pelipper. And you'll never be able to convince me that Pidgey isn't a house sparrow. For this reason, you can literally see a Pokémon just by going out and looking for birds. At the end of the day, the world of Pokémon is of course fictitious, and nothing quite like it will ever exist in the real world. However, birding is pretty much the closest hobby there is to being a real-life Pokémon trainer. Have you ever made this connection before? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Badgerland Birding.